great to see where everyone's coming from. There's a real diversity of people here. Okay. We've got 36 people in the room, which is great. I think around 40 people signed up, so that's a good sign. Well done, everyone, for being here at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. It's great to see you here. So we are from the Food, Farming and Countryside Commission, and you'll have seen, if you've just joined in the chat, we're asking people to just introduce themselves, where they're from, and maybe what you're interested in. We're looking at the Cumbrian inquiry, but the learnings and the things we'll be talking about have a regional focus as well as a national focus. So we're really interested to have everyone's input anyway. Just normal Zoom, I'm sure you're all fully fledged Zoomers by now, but just so you're aware to keep your microphone muted, and hopefully we'll be all right with having our cameras on. I think the connection's okay at the moment, and we are now recording the session. So I mentioned before, we're recording, so if you don't want to be in the recording, please turn your camera off and keep your microphone muted, just to let you know, because it will be shared online with people who weren't able to make it. And we've got Helena here, who's from the Northern Real Farming Conference team, so thanks very much to Northern Real Farming Conference for having us. It's really exciting to be here for the first ever one. So thank you, Helena, and thank you to the conference team as well for this amazing organisation to bring all these great people together. So to start, I'm just going to introduce who we've got here from the Food, Farming and Countryside Commission, including myself. So we've got Sue Pritchard here, who's the Chief Exec of the Food, Farming and Countryside Commission. She's busy collaborating with leaders in business, other organisations and government, whilst also running her own organic permaculture livestock farm. So lots going on. Great to have you here, Sue. And Sue's going to give us an overview of the Commission's work and the place-based inquiries around the UK as well. So we'll come to that a little bit later. We also have Julia Aglionby here as well, who's chairing the Cumbria inquiry. She is Professor in Practice at Cumbria University, and that's her position as chair as well. She wears lots of hats. So she's the Director of Foundation for Common Land, Chair of the Uplands Alliance, and is a practicing Chartered Surveyor and Agricultural Valuer. So she's got lots going on as well. And I'm Hannah. So I am coordinating the Cumbria inquiry. I started a few months ago, so we're still early days. I do this part-time, and in my other time, I'm doing my PhD as well part-time. My PhD is looking at common land, and I'm working with the Our Common Cause project, looking at how commons are managed and how we bring together diverse perspectives. So I'm really interested in and excited by collaborative work and collective leadership, which is very much what the Food, Farming Countryside Commission is about as well. So before we get into talking about the work we do, I thought we'd do a quick exercise, an imagination exercise, to get you in this space of thinking about what some of our transitions will look like. So the title for this session is From Research to Action, Supporting Food, Farming and Health Transitions to a Greener and Fairer Society for All, which is quite a grand title, but we are looking for the next 3 years in Cumbria to do some really practical actions alongside the UK-based work that's happening as well, and amplifying the voices and the people that are already doing lots of work in this area. So I'd like to take you to 10 years' time. It's a bit of a visualization, so I'm going to talk through a short paragraph, and if you want to, you can close your eyes to help you imagine what it might be like. And afterwards, I'm going to ask Helena to put you all into breakout rooms of 2s, so you can do a quick 2-minute feedback to say what you felt, what you saw and things. So I'll pose a few questions as part of the visioning exercise as well. So I'll go ahead and do this. So if you feel like closing your eyes, don't fall asleep, but it's good to bring you into that imagination space if you feel like you want to do that. So, right, get myself into the zone as well. If you were to imagine our places in 10 years' time, in 2030, what would it look, sound, smell, feel, and taste like? I invite you to imagine that we are 10 years in the future, and those 10 intervening years were filled with positive, brilliant, and bold action towards a more sustainable, regenerative, and equitable future. With cascades of change that have happened around the UK and in Cumbria, we are now living in a world where our landscapes are becoming vibrant with regenerating ecosystem health, localised food systems, and fair access to the countryside. Our local communities are thriving with support for farm businesses, local food available at many accessible outlets, and there's a sustainable visitor economy with multiple benefits for people and landscapes. All of those areas of food, farming and countryside are interlinked in practice, with collaboration and collective leadership the norm. People from around Cumbria and beyond are enjoying and caring for our landscapes. Take an imaginary walk through Cumbria. Maybe you go somewhere in particular, a particular valley, a town, your favourite fell. What do you see? What do you hear? What does it feel like? What stands out? How is daily life different to 10 years ago? Take yourself on a little imaginary walk through maybe one of your favourite places in Cumbria, or somewhere you know of in particular. Enjoy your walk. Great. Okay. I'm going to ask Helena to split this into breakout rooms if possible. Helena, into twos, and we're just going to have 5 minutes in the breakout rooms, if that's okay.
So you should all have been invited to your breakout rooms. If you haven't, let me know if you have any problems joining. Ooh. So Hannah, I can message all of the groups if you want me to put.
You can, yeah. It's just maybe something around in 2030, what would it look, sound, smell, feel and taste like, I think.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
No problem. And if you let me know, you get like a minute on the breakout room to, you know, from when we say we're closing, when it actually closes. So if you just let me know when you want it to close, I can close it as well.
Hopefully everyone's got someone to talk to.
Yeah, I'm just making sure that everybody's in a room that has people in.
Marta said she can't get in.
Okay. Let's see, Marta. Bill Grayson's in a room. Oh God.
Right.
Okay, I'm trying to get everybody.
Tam and Marta.
Yeah, I'm just moving everybody into. Right, everybody should be in a room now. I think it might be easier for future ones to do, well, obviously you're doing a bigger group next time, but a lot of people seem to have not joined the, they've chosen not to join the breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So when we split it into two, there are quite a few groups that haven't got people in, but that's fine. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. Sorry, I was alone, so I came back. But
Sorry.
I think as I came back, someone else joined, so I just missed
Yeah. Do you want me to put you in a room? Or are you okay?
Yeah, if you can.
Okay, let's see.
Should have been more patient.
I think you might be, I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. I think you might be stuck with us now.
Okay.
Maybe we can talk about
Yeah, you can tell
fine.
us, or you can type it in the chat as well. I meant to say actually that people are welcome to type their reflections in the chat if they want to, but you can talk to us if you want.
I don't mind. I can just share here. I don't know if anyone else is listening. But yeah, that's really nice actually. It made me think, and I thought about the valley where my parents live, which is in southwest Cumbria. And recently been speaking to a farmer who lives in the valley there, and she's quite young and she's just sort of starting their journey into changing their farming. It's quite exciting.
Oh, wow.
Because at the moment it's a very bright green valley. There's a lot of like monoculture grassland, a lot of slurry spreading. So I'm quite excited about the future of a lot more fruit growing, because there's loads of potential to grow fruit and lots of kind of diversity in the type of landscape that's around in the bottom of the valley. Yeah, and the smell of the blossom in spring, like the garden of the guy that lives next to my parents is just full of fruit. It's like one of those sun-trapped valleys in Cumbria that just is a lot warmer, like loads of damsons and plums, and
wow.
Yeah. So I'd love to see more of that, and more kind of more trees on the hills around it, like nice kind of features in the landscape for holding water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel quite excited though, because I think it's not just a few people that are thinking about it. It's quite a lot of people that are wanting, and people that have that are actually farming the landscape that want to change it as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
What about you, Hannah?
Well, I couldn't imagine. I was reading that when I did this last time, I imagined getting on an electric bus and traveling through Cumbria with groups of people, like traveling around on electric buses and no cars really, and just lots of wildlife and hay meadows, and then coming back into Cockermouth and there being local food markets, like really vibrant shops and community spaces and things that you could go and use. So that's what I imagined when I did this exercise, and I just really enjoyed it. It brings you in a really positive space.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Should we give people a 60-second warning?
Okay.
I was given a few extra minutes just to.
I think this is going to work. If I press close all rooms, they should get 60 seconds to leave their breakout.
Great. Thanks, Helena.
Yeah, sorry it didn't. I think some people chose not to join, so it kind of messed up the group slightly, but we'll sort it for the next one.
Yeah, no worries. Would you suggest maybe doing bigger groups next time, Helena?
Yeah, I think the groups of 6 will be fine.
Okay, that's great. No worries.
But I'll be I'll keep an eye on it.
Great. For anyone that's in here already, there's people starting to come back. If you want to share any reflections on that exercise itself or what you experienced, feel free to add it to the chat. It'd be great to hear some of what you experienced through that exercise. Nearly everyone's back. Thanks, Tam. If you had any thoughts as well, please add them. It'd be great to hear. Yeah, for anyone just coming back in and joining us, if you want to share any thoughts, reflections on the exercise or what you saw, or anything that came up for you, please share it in the chat. It'd be great to hear about that. Is everyone back now, Helena?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So on that note, yeah, continue sharing if you want to, but I'm now going to hand over to Sue to give us a bit of an overview of the Commission's work, if that's okay, Sue.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you, Hannah.
You've got about 10 minutes if you want, maybe a bit less, whatever.
Sure. Well, I'll if I go on for too long, you just stop me. Good. So, lovely to be here this evening. It feels really pleasantly cozy. Actually, the nights are dark, and I was a bit anxious I wouldn't be able to get my chickens to bed before I settled in, but bless them, they were very accommodating. So it feels like it almost feels like we're up the pub, although I've got a cup of tea and not a glass of wine in my hand. So it's lovely to be here, even though I'm a little bit sad I'm not actually in Cumbria and at home on the farm in Wales. So I'm guessing that people on the call have got some idea of the Food Farming Countryside Commission. So I'll do the quickest scamper through our history and talk a little bit more about what we're doing now and what we hope to do next. And then we'll have plenty of time to chat later. So the Commission was set up back in 2017, really following the Brexit vote, when a whole group of business, NGO, farming and food system leaders were really very concerned about the implications of that vote for the food and farming system around the UK, and wanted to engage a much broader range of perspectives and voices in thinking about what this would really mean for us as a country and to help shape a new vision for the future of food and farming and the countryside. Initially, they hoped it might be a government commission, but government was a bit distracted, and as they approached the Esmee Fairbairn Foundation, who agreed that it was indeed an important enterprise and agreed to fund it. So we were located at the RSA, chaired by Sir Ian Cheshire, who's chair of Barclays Bank and was at the time chair of the government non-executive directors, and who's got a long history in shifting businesses towards more sustainable practices, and then a group of 14 commissioners who are drawn from a real range of sectors, from farming, as you might expect, from food businesses, hospitality, retail, food service, but also we invited public health professionals, environmentalists, green organisations and citizens groups to join. So we had a brilliant group of commissioners who really encouraged us, along with our funder, to be bold in our work and to really push the boundaries of what a commission might ordinarily do, which was a very, very exciting invitation, as you might imagine. So we started, 3 years ago now, actually, yes, 3 years ago this month, and started out doing all of the things that normal commissions do. We surveyed the territory, we looked at the range of policies and proposals that were already in the system. We put out calls for ideas to ask people who'd already been doing this work for some time to contribute their best ideas. We organised roundtables and workshops on the sorts of themes and topics that we'd identified. But we also tried to do things a little bit differently. And there were two things, I think, that we did that maybe mark us out from different types of commission. So the first is that we set up separate inquiries, long-term action research inquiries in 3 parts of England and also the devolved nations in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, because as most of you will know, food and farming and indeed environment policy is a devolved matter, and the devolved nations have planned to do things somewhat differently to England. But we also knew that England is a really diverse country too, and we wanted to demonstrate that in our inquiry. Michael talks to Peter. I think somebody needs to go on. Is that William who needs to go on mute? Yeah, there we go. Good. So we set up inquiries in the devolved nations, inquiries in 3 counties around England, and really invited people in those counties to think about what they wanted us to know and how what we were doing could help them progress the things that were important to them. The other thing that we did that was a little bit different, we were really determined to get out around the whole of the country and to make sure that we heard the voices of people who don't typically turn up at a consultation in a rather grim hotel on the edge of a town at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Unlike us, it's a bit different for us now. We could just sit in our homes to do it. So we travelled the whole of the UK on bicycles, and my team of researchers set out from London and went right round the east coast, up into Scotland, across to Northern Ireland, down through Wales, into Cornwall and the south coast and into the middle. Took 9 months to make that journey, and spent that time with people in communities, staying with people in their homes, visiting businesses, visiting farms, visiting markets, visiting schools, visiting community groups. And alongside the work that we did, the deep dives that we did in those 6 places around the UK, we developed a very, very rich picture of what really matters to people around the country, what they're concerned about, what they're excited about, and the kind of country that they want us to be. And so we produced our reports back in July 2019. And to our great relief, they were widely appreciated. We got cross-party support from all of the main political parties, and support from farming groups, from the green NGOs, from citizens groups. That we were incredibly gratified to have found a set of recommendations and common ground that so many different groups and people felt that they could support. And our recommendations, as you'll all know, centre on 3 things: that healthy food has to be everybody's business, that farming can be a force for change, and the countryside has to work for all. And in each of those recommendations, we set out a number of particular policy suggestions. So, thanks to the support that we received from Esmee, they invited us to consider whether we thought there might be... Oh, sorry about that. I'm going to try and turn that off. And there's nobody at home to get it for me. That's frustrating. So yes, Esmee invited us to put in a bid and to work with stakeholders to find out whether there might be a long-term role for us, and to maybe think about whether we could help implement our recommendations. So we did that around Christmas last year, and talking to a whole variety of different people, big organisations, small organisations, places all around the country. We were very pleased to be invited to continue. So we put a proposal together for Esmee based on the feedback that we'd got from our conversations, and we like doing things in threes, so we put together another set of 3 strands of work. And the first, and these were all suggested to us, in fact, by stakeholders, by people who felt we did have a role to play. And the first thing that they said we had done pretty well and needed to continue to do was to convene leadership from right across the system around the really difficult issues, the issues that often get kicked into the too hard box or end up being very contested and full of conflict. And people were keen that we would try to continue to hold open a big tent where people with very different perspectives could come in, work through those really difficult issues, find common ground and find common purpose and ways forward to act on those. The second thing that we are focused on now is helping to implement our recommendations, particularly those which maybe wouldn't be picked up by any one individual, the sorts of things that perhaps fall between policy stools or that don't yet have a coalition convene behind them. And the ones that we're working on particularly at the moment is a land use framework for England, a process by which we can develop principles for how land is used, not just around things like farming and the farming and rewilding debates, but also about housing, about energy, about infrastructure, a process by which those really complex debates and choices and trade-offs need to be made. But instead of talking about it as a strategy, which people had often tried to do in the past, which is very redolent of top-down approaches, we've described a framework which is as much to do with the bottom-up concerns of communities at a range of spatial scales to consider how land is best used in a particular landscape or catchment. So that's the first big thing that we've been working on. The second big thing that's really important to us is the transition to agroecology by 2030. We've been working, in fact, Julia's been doing a lot of work with us on this to help map out a route map and the steps on a transition that take us to more regenerative farming systems. And we've been doing quite a bit of work with DEFRA and in the context of ELMS to make sure that any support systems take the farming system in what we think will be the right direction for climate, for nature and for people's health and well-being. We've also been doing some work around an agroecology development bank, because we know such a transition will need resources behind it. We'll need financial resources and it will need knowledge resources, farmer-led and peer-to-peer networks to spread the kind of knowledge and intelligence and insight that will be needed for such a far-reaching transition. And we've also been helping to work on the National Nature Service. So this is a recommendation that's already taken off. It's gone in as a proposal to the Comprehensive Spending Review from a group of green NGOs, and we've been doing a little bit of development work with them, and perhaps adding in what we think is really important, that it's also accessible to farmers and cooperatives of farmers, so that in thinking about regenerating land and landscapes and restoring nature, farmers and groups of farmers can also access the kind of resources that would come with people who work in the National Nature Service. And the last thing, and perhaps this is the thing that's most relevant, so I finally got to it, the last thing that we're focused on doing is what we're calling resourcing more resilient, more adaptable communities, fit to face whatever scenarios we might be considering in the future. Now, again, when we wrote our bid to Esmee with that as one of our key strands, this was back at Christmas, we were thinking then of the climate emergency and the nature emergency. But of course, now we're in the middle of a public health crisis and an economic crisis, which brings all of those big questions into very immediate and sharp relief. But of course, the climate and nature emergencies have not gone away. So we're directing our resources and directing our support and strengthening our local inquiries. And in this case, in Cumbria, chaired by Julia, supported by Hannah, and with a group of people, we want to engage in that leadership group to think about what's really needed in Cumbria, and how can we help? How can we support all of the work that groups are already doing? We know that it's an incredibly vibrant part of the country with so many people, organisations, groups and communities already heavily engaged in thinking about these big issues. But sometimes some more resource might be needed, or some different perspectives might be needed, or some joining up with other parts of the country might be needed. And so we're now working with Hannah, with Julia and others to explore how we can help. And not just how we can help Cumbria do what it needs to do, but how we can learn from the very granular experience of putting great theory into practice and moving through complex change and transition processes, and feed that learning back into the policy space to make sure that any policies that are put in place in that London town have a real understanding and appreciation of the impact that they will have in communities around the country.
Great.
So I'll stop there. How long was I? Was I ridiculously too long?
No, it was about 10 minutes, I think, just over, which is, it's fine. I was going to butt in, but you felt like you were going to round off. So thanks, Sue. That was great. It was really good to get that overview. And I'm going to hand straight over to Julia, actually, to talk a little bit more about the Cumbrian work we've been doing. Julia, maybe about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Hannah, and thanks to Sue for that introduction. So yes, I've been involved with the Commission before it became the Commission from 2016. Early meetings were held in London and grand houses of sort of Public Health England, etc., in Portland Street and Great Portland Street. And it's wonderful to see all the work that Sue's done of bringing this to fruition. And I've been absolutely honoured and delighted to be chairing the Cumbria Inquiry. I sort of first knew about it when I saw my name on the website announcing me as the chair. Sue has a good way of doing business. There's a no, but it's so good to have so many of you joining us here tonight. So as Sue said, the key for me is getting things into practice, and in particular around the 3 themes. So just to remind you, healthy food is everybody's business, farming is a force for change, and a countryside that works for all. So we've there was a piece of work done, the gap analysis done during the first stage of the Commission, and this undertaken by Professor Lois Mansfield from the University of Cumbria. And there were 2 big outcomes, 2 major sort of outcomes from that, and she looked at all of the complex landscape of work that was being undertaken, and in particular looking at the sort of need for how we support people to make change. So an advisory service, how do we support change to happen, that transformation? And secondly, how do we bring people together better to actually have a deal with those conflicts? We live in a particularly contested landscape in Cumbria, and Hannah's doing work on this through her PhD. But it's really important, you know, we look at that and how we help each individual farmer and land manager and food grower to really think through that contested space that they're really having all this stuff dumped on them on a daily basis, criticism from everyone, it seems, and it's really hard to move forward, particularly in this time of transition. For me, I am just deeply concerned about the next 10 years. I feel we have a phenomenal opportunity and a risk for it all to go seriously wrong. And I hope the Commission is going to be at the heart of making sure when we're going down that canyon with all these rapids in it, that actually we have enough resources and enough support to guide us through those rapids and come out successfully stronger at the other end. But we're not going to do this alone. And last week, Hannah brought together a leadership group, the formations of a leadership group in Cumbria to look at how we shape our work going forward. And in terms, Hannah's going to share a little bit about the outcomes of what we're thinking about and the feedback, isn't it, Hannah? That's what we're wanting to look at. So I might just hand over back to you, Hannah, to share those findings, and then we want to hear very much from those of you who are joining us today, and we'll go back into breakout rooms to see what your views are on our ideas so far.
Great. Yeah, thanks Julia for being so quick, but there's quite a lot in there in terms of bringing people together and how we shoot those rapids and come out the other end hopefully in a better place than we were, which is what we're trying to support through our work. So I'm going to share my screen and just show you some of the feedback we've had. So Julia mentioned the meeting we had last week, so it's all very fresh, all very new, and we did a pre-meeting survey which was really interesting. We got some really rich feedback through that, and some of there were 4 key questions looking at asking people what they saw as the major issues, the opportunities, where the gaps are that we can work in, and what they think the priorities should be for our 3 years of work that we've got ahead of us. So to summarize, there was a lot to this, and it was quite hard to summarize. It was very rich with people's responses, and it was from a fantastic diversity of people, so that's a really big thing. We really want to have that diverse audiences to look at these 3 key areas. We need to bring together new people, not the usual suspects, hopefully, in working groups and in the leadership groups. So these 6 points, I've tried to just summarize some of what came out through that meeting and through the survey. So the first point is around the need to integrate our food farming and countryside systems, both in practice and our decision making, as well as within education and public engagement. And this is around kind of valuing the multiple benefits of landscape in a really integrated way, and also showing what this looks like in reality. So it's not a pie in the sky idea, it's something that we can actually do in practice. The second point is around supporting farmers and land managers to meet local Cumbrian needs in our context, but also how the Cumbrian context fits in with the wider UK needs, and that includes the response around the climate and nature emergencies, our food supply and its resilience. We've seen how resilient our food supply can be in a time of a pandemic, so something we need to be looking at. Another point was advocating for policies, including ELMs, which should, for them to be place specific and long term, so not these short term goals, but to look longer term. What do we really want for the next few generations and things like that, including valuing those multiple benefits from cultural heritage through to food supply and all the ecosystem services that are produced, like flood mitigation and things. And then supporting collaborative and multi-scale work and decision making. There was a real calling out again for that integration through collaboration and collective leadership, and how we do that on a multi-scale. So we need to make it relevant to, say, the single farm or the single small business, all the way up through regional, international contexts and even global implications. Addressing issues of inclusivity and poverty So I saw in the chat that someone mentioned about diversity in our landscapes, and they can be very white, kind of middle class potentially. And how do we bring in those more diverse voices and make them feel welcome in our landscape? So that's around access to countryside and the benefits that has on health and well-being, but also having fairer systems in terms of access to local healthy food, etc. So, and the last point I've got here is engaging with those diverse audiences that I've mentioned, both through practice and how we're working in the inquiry, how practice works going forward, and also through education as well. So that was just some of the things that came out of the leadership group that we've started to form, which is really exciting, and we hope to, we've started doing some of the work there. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So there's 4 areas that we're actually looking at in terms of the ideas that we'd like to develop. So there's the route map to the new environmental land management scheme. So how do we get farmers and land managers from where they're at now to where they need to be to engage with the environmental land management scheme, and also beyond that, what do we need to do to have more resilient systems? National Nature Service. So we're looking at, and we've already started building a land-based skills network. I've got people like the Dry Stone Walling Association on board, looking at the Hedge Laying Society, the Coppice Association, and other people in practice, and bringing those people together to work cross-sector. That's a big gap. We need more cross-sector working, and this is around creating opportunities for young people to experience being outdoors and doing land-based skills, to get trained in them, and then potentially have opportunities for paid work and see it as an income stream. Then health and well-being, and that access to healthy food in the countryside, maybe through education opportunities and things like care farms. So Julia has a care farm, and there's another one in Kendal called Growing Well as well. And the 4th point is getting local food to market. So that is something that came really strongly through the leadership group, this importance of food and how we get our local high quality food to a diverse audience, essentially. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for a minute, and I'm going to ask Helena to come back. Because we have a poll set up. So those 4 ideas, we've got a poll set up, and I believe you just need to tick which ones you think are important in that poll, just to get an initial idea of what you think. So it should be on your screen now, and I can see when you voted. So it's those 4 ideas that I've just briefly gone through, and whether or not you think they're a good plan. Great, votes are coming in now. Great, okay. So that's a fairly even split. Slightly more for National Nature Service, but National Nature Service, health and well-being, getting local food to market. Yeah, it's pretty even split. Statistically, I don't think that would be a significant difference. So great, thanks, Helena. So do we need to, is that okay? Do we just close that now?
Yeah, I can share the results with everyone if you'd like me to. Do you want to
yeah, that would be great. So now we're just going to go into discussion groups. So we'd like you to have some discussions, and we've got 2 points that we'd like you to discuss around. Helena's going to put them in the chat for you, and you'll be put into breakout rooms of 5 or 6 people. So the 2 points are, what do you think could usefully happen in the next 3 years for the Cumbrian inquiry to support thriving farm businesses? And then how could Cumbria's natural assets be used to build back better for jobs and well-being? So they're quite broad and you can interpret them essentially how you want to, and it'd be really interesting to hear your opinions, and you can add any other comments to the chat as well. But we're going to have probably half an hour for discussion groups, if that's okay with everyone. So if you will send the discussion points in the chat, if you could nominate a spokesperson, that would be great. We might have time for a little bit of feedback, or at least one person to maybe type in the chat some feedback. I'm also going to share my email address. So if you take any notes or have any questions through the discussion, please feel free to send it to me, and then I'll be able to go through it. We'll be recording the chat through the session as well, so we can use that feedback. So I think if anyone has any questions, just let us know in the chat. But other than that, I think, Helena, it'd be great to put people into breakout rooms.
Okay. Okay. Great. So great. Adam hasn't joined, but that he should have an option on his screen to join. Maybe just stepped away from the computer for a moment. And you have been assigned to a group that you are not in just yet.
Yeah, I said later on it because I wasn't sure whether or not to join one, to be honest, or maybe just hang out here.
Yeah, I'm gonna just put the questions into the chat.
Thank you. Oh, if you could just say, yeah, note to nominate a spokesperson or a note taker.
Yeah.
As well, that'd be great.
Okay.
Do they go into the chat, or shall I put them in the chat as well?
Yeah, I'll put them in now. I'm just gonna, they get like a direct message to the chat group, which I've sent through, and then
I've not seen that before.
Chat as well. Okay. And if you want, you can, I think you can move in and out of groups.
Oh, can I?
So if you want, I can move you from group to group on a 5-minute basis. So if you join, choose to join the group now, in at 25 past, I'll move you onto a different room.
Yeah, that's great. So if we give people a 60-second warning at like 16 minutes to or something.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll sort that out for you.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Just message me if you've got any problems.
Yeah, no worries.
Can you see where to join your group?
Not yet, no.
I'm going to try to move you into a different group. Oh. Have you got an option to move into a group there?
No. Don't panic, it's fine. I'll just have a zen moment. No, it's not coming up with a notification.
Do you have the broadcast rooms at the breakout rooms at the bottom?
Yeah, I've got the button.
See if you can press it and join
Oh,
where it
yeah,
says
it does.
join.
Okay. I thought it would come up on my screen. My fault.
Yeah, I think you can also navigate yourself then. You can choose which ones you want to go to using that
really?
function.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Helena.
Okay. Adam, let me know if you're having a problem joining any of the groups. No, not that. Okay.
Great. Are you able to send that to me as well? How does that?
Yeah. So you won't get a recording of the individual groups, but
No.
you'll get the presentations.
Will we get the chat as well? You save that as a file.
I can copy it and send it to you, so just to make sure that you get it.
That would be great, yeah. Thanks. Oh, everyone's joining. Is that everyone back?
No, there should be quite a few more. Yep.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are here now.
Great. Welcome back, everyone. So it was really interesting. I was jumping in and out of the breakout rooms and had some really great discussions about lots of different things, like we need to be training people in land-based skills, but also ecology, and linking those two up is really vital, and we should be valuing our farmers a heck of a lot more than we do. Yeah, lots of great discussions going on. So I think that's everyone back now. And I don't know if you managed to nominate a spokesperson, but it would be great if you have. And I'll go around each breakout room and I'll literally just give the spokesperson maybe a minute or a bit more than a minute, just to feed back some key points from your discussions. That would be really nice. And also feel free to type extra things in the chat from your breakout rooms as well. So I'm hoping you remember the number of the breakout room you were in. So is anyone from breakout room 1 able to share?
I can tell you who was in the breakout rooms if that's easier. So,
yeah.
So there was Anya, Liam, Nick, Rupert, and Sue's group.
Great.
We didn't get around to nominating anyone, but I'm happy to kick off and
go for it, Liam.
So we were lucky in that we had a group with people from Manchester and Rugby, so I think and Wales, as well as Cumbria. So I think we had a broader conversation. we first looked at in terms of what can be done now, and using COVID as a catalyst to really get things going on a national nature service. We had a really interesting conversation because it's been framed as a kind of land and rural piece mainly, but actually the point was raised that there's huge opportunity for urban green spaces and the skills and wider engagement and social benefit of that, and I think that was quite a powerful point. The second area we talked about local food and the opportunities to connect people with local food, and again some good examples from Manchester and Rugby, and then a wider conversation about how you can make closer connections between people and their food and understanding what they're buying and valuing it. And we thought that particularly around a trade deal and the risks around that now, what can be done now is really raising awareness of the risks of a trade deal. And Sue mentioned work that that's going on the Trade Unwrapped programme. And the importance of projects that really link people locally to land locally where food can be grown. So that's my impromptu feedback. Apologies to other participants if I've missed anything. Please tell me if I have.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. That's great. Good to see you here. If anyone from Liam's group wants to type extra things in the chat, please feel free. But I'm going to move on to breakout room 2 if possible.
So breakout room 2 is Abby, Adrian, Bill, and Heather.
Anyone brave enough? I know
as no one else is coming forward.
Thanks, Bill.
We talked a bit about potential conflicts between local aspirations and national commitments. And one good example from Cumbria is the number of trees in the landscape. So quite clearly the Lake District has been designated for its landscape qualities as a World Heritage Site, and that maybe raises conflicts with national commitments to get more trees in the uplands as a means of storing carbon, holding back water, and all those sort of issues. So we recognise that there are issues there that will need some significant sorting out, and we kind of all agreed that education was going to be a key strand of that sorting out process. So it was concerning, we felt, that this was all at the time when Newton Rig is facing closure, and so we think some significant effort and thought needs to be put into reconstituting it, but on a much more agroecological basis, so that it could lead this this renewal, this transformation process in a way that didn't alienate a lot of people who are concerned with managing these landscapes.
Great. Yeah, great. Newton Rig's very much at the forefront of people's minds at the moment, so good to highlight that. And we're working with Adrian Bamford, who's leading on the strategy board that's looking at kind of that whole that's going to be created. So hopefully we can work with people to come up with some just suggestions around that. Great, thanks, Bill. And then breakout room 3.
Okay, so that was Anna, Jenny, Miriam, and Sue.
I can talk about it, though I am perhaps the least qualified. We had 2 Cumbrian farmers, a PhD student, and me, who is a chemist. I'm just mostly here to learn, but I will freely admit that we went off topic a bit at first because none of us felt quite qualified to comment on the report. So we started out talking about, again, COVID as an opportunity for agritourism perhaps, because there's so many people who want to get out into nature right now but can't travel abroad to do it. So going out into nature locally seems like a natural fit with farms and agritourism. And then we talked about how challenging that is for farmers who are raising sheep or growing barley, because diversification of your farm is an entirely different skill set from farming. So there may be a need there for consultants or some sort of nonprofit to assist farmers in doing that. I don't know if that's within the scope of what you're doing at all, but it's something that came up. And then we started talking about selling directly to consumers and how farmers who are on the smaller side may struggle with accessing that because they don't have their own online shop. And really, even going to a farmer's market is too much of a challenge if you don't specialize in going to a farmer's market, because you need infrastructure, you need perhaps a special chiller if you're selling meat, you need to know what the regulations are about selling, you need to have a license, and smaller volume farms won't be able to go, every week or every month and have goods to sell. So we thought that there might be room there for a middleman where it's sort of a farmers collaborative that has a collective stall at a farmer's market, and then it's farmer of the week or farmer of the month that swaps out every month. So all the infrastructure is there, the chilling cabinet and so on, and the licenses are there, but the farmer just has to show up and provide the product. And then finally, we ended up with talking about how there's so much going on. There seem to be multiple initiatives to help farmers and funding, but if you're doing farming as a full-time job, you don't have time to seek out that information. So how do you find the people who can help you? And obviously conferences like this help, but again, maybe there's room for some sort of independent advisor or network or something. I'm not sure if that already exists or not, but it would be good to know about.
Amazing, a lot there. I was on the Open Food Network, is a online shop where you can do exactly what you're talking about and come together as a collective and have an online shop. Doesn't have the infrastructure, but maybe that's something to look at. We have one now in Cockermouth. We've got a food hub, so that's a thing. But yeah, there's a lot there, so thank you very much. And then breakout room 4.
Yes, that's Kathy, Iris, Julia, Matthew and Tom.
Great. I think Kathy's just typed in actually some of the key things. Kathy, did you want to chat through that, or?
Yeah, well, I just put it in the chat because I thought we were running short of time, and there's quite a lot to feedback. So I'll pass on that if you want.
Yeah,
I think
no
I've got most of the points in there.
Yeah, I like the idea of seeing Cumbria as a centre for wellbeing and recovery. Yeah, great. No, that's fine. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, we've got 5 minutes left, so maybe just go on to the last breakout room that we had.
So it's Liz, Rachel, Robert and Rod.
Great.
Yeah, I was nominated to feedback. I think we went a bit off topic at the start because we weren't sure what the questions are, but we had a really nice conversation around the potential for like a vibrant landscape in Cumbria, and I guess surrounding regions as well, like with coppicing and woodland management and different types of food growing. But we also looked at the challenges that there were for that. Like we needed to make sure that it was an attractive way for people to make money and was possible. So we talked about things such as competition, like with other cheap kind of cheap food, whether it be grown in this country or abroad, like land access. So who can actually access land to use it and to grow food or to manage it in the way that we might have a vision for, and that includes stuff like accommodation in rural areas, and then obviously having the training for people. And we also talked about the importance of bringing more farmers on board, and how important it was to find those key people in farming communities that could really influence the farmers around them. So Rod spoke about someone in T-Bay who's totally transformed his farming neighborhood in some ways because he's got very enthusiastic about natural flood management and soil health, and that's totally changed. He's managed to bring like farmers together around his interests. And then we talked a little bit as well, because there was 3 researchers in our group, or maybe 4, and yeah, how research is actually really wants to support people's interests in different areas, and farmers asking a lot of questions, and how important the initiatives like Innovative Farmers are for bringing kind of groups of farmers and researchers together. Yeah, and there's definitely research interest in supporting and kind of making time to to get involved more with practical research.
Great. Thank you very much. Amazing. This is all really helpful, and getting some new ideas from lots of different people is great. And I wonder if the guy Rod was talking about was Danny Teasdale, potentially. He's in the Ullswater Valley. He set up Ullswater Community Interest Company, and we're working with him on the National Nature Service and a few other bits and bobs. So he's a very enthusiastic farmer who managed to bring together a network of farmers in his valley to get this work done. So yeah, I'll maybe ask Rod if that's who he meant. But great, so we've got 2 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone that stayed with us to the end. It's been really interesting jumping in and out of the discussions and hearing your feedback. I've just put my my contact details in the chat, so you can email me if you want to. My email address and my Twitter handle is there, but it's also on the Food, Farming and Countryside Commission website. So if you miss it, you're welcome to contact me. I'd really like to hear any comments or any other notes that you maybe took or reflections that you had. But other than that, I think, Julia, did you want to say anything, or Sue? I think other than that, we're good.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Hannah. I think big thanks to Hannah, who's organised this, and she's put a huge amount of effort into bringing us all together. And so thank you, Hannah, and also to all the support from the Northern Real Farming Conference, Helena and her colleagues. Big help, thanks. We're absolutely delighted to have had the opportunity to share our ideas and to have that feedback. I mean, Jenny, who's on the call, who lives in Cumbria, you know, is mentioning in the chat round a citizens' assembly, and I know that Sue's got lots of experience with that, and how we can reach out further to get a broader representation is very critical to making sure what the work we're doing resonates and speaks to not just the usual suspects. So we're collecting lots of great ideas from your input, and thank you very much. And as Sue has said, thanks also to our funder Esmee Fairbairn, and Liam is there as director of Our Natural World. He's just started a few weeks ago, migrated from Cumbria to, I think, virtually migrated by Zoom perhaps, to King's Cross. And so if any of you would like to follow us on Twitter, and you can follow Hannah or myself or Sue individually, and or also the Food, Farming Countryside Commission, and we'd just love to have your continuing input over the coming months and years. So, you know, enjoy the rest of the conference, and I know that several of us involved in other sessions, so perhaps see you later over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll be around. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Great.
Thanks, Helena.
It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I'm going to email the chat comments over to you now.
Lovely.